Hi, and very welcome to the International Women's Day, 8th of March. We are gathered here to share inspiration, and we are going to listen to Elin Appel, Ewellyn Capanema, and Kristin Israelsson. So we really look forward to hear what you are going to share with us. Our first speaker is Elin from Paper Province. Hi, Elin, how are you?
Hi, Maria. I'm fine, thank you. Thank
Good.
you so much for having me here today.
I'm totally excited. And again, so happy that we got so many people in company.
Thank you, Maria. And hello to all of you. So good to see how many we are here on the International Women's Day. First of all, I would like to thank the Ligno City team for inviting me here today. It's a great honor for me. And as Maria said, my name is Elin Appel, and I work as a product manager at Paper Province. And I would like to use my time here today to tell you a little about my journey. So let's start from the beginning. When I reflect in recent years, my parents probably fulfill every single box for being considered the traditional gender role family, where my father acted in the role as the income earner and my mother cared for all of the household chores. At the same time, I'm struck by the fact that I didn't see it like this at all throughout my youth. On the contrary, I felt like my parents were most equal as anyone, and always made their decisions together, and no one had more right or wrong than the other one. And what I particularly remember is that they always supported me in all of my crazy ideas. Like the day when I was 12 years old and told them that I was going to be a soccer referee, or when I, at the age of 18, went backpacking in South America on my own to learn about other cultures. They have always believed in my capacity and have never hesitated nor made any difference just because I'm a woman. Contrary-wise, they have always cheered extra for me, as I have chosen paths that's not considered following the traditional pattern. So after my master's degree in engineering, I took on my first job as a building inspector. Dressed in craft pants, I crawled in craft plots, walked along roof tops, and maneuvered skylifts, all in my eagerness to find out how things really works in the reality and not just in school books. I remember that I was often greeted by the comment, and when will the inspector come? As I arrived at the site as a 25-year-old woman that I was, with my 160 centimeters reaching above ground level. I always saw it as a challenge and did everything I could to prove my skills. And one of the biggest reasons I think that I weren't offended by the comment was because of my team of co-workers who always had my back. They supported me, and they made me understand my own ability. After my first employment, I made a proper plan for my career. I knew a lot about construction in theory, and now also had a pretty good idea on how buildings had been constructed throughout the ages. To fill my gap of knowledge, I needed to learn more about the different processes around a construction project. So said and done. After my first employment, I have worked as a supervisor at a construction site, a project manager at a consultant company, and as a quality manager at a construction contractor. About 1 year ago, I was headhunted to Paper Province to lead their first project within timber construction. This turned out to be a perfect match, and I absolutely love my assignment at Paper Province from so many aspects. And it might sound quite cliche, but as I see it, through my work, I do contribute to a more beautiful world where hope and future dreams actually can come true. Something that, especially in these times, post-corona and with an ongoing invasion of Ukraine, feels extremely important. Although I couldn't predict exactly what kind of jobs I was going to take on throughout my career, I can assure you that I've never made random choices for my career. Early on, I examined myself and tried to map the gaps of my knowledge. Another important insight has been to understand the other factors within a job that motivates me. And for example, I've learned that I'm a team player and therefore value my colleagues and the culture very, very high. I simply perform better when I'm surrounded by a dream team. At the same time, I've many times felt unsure about what's right for me at a given moment. And have always found support in one of my professors from the university. He knows how I'm thinking, and he can provide me a professional angle that gives me the comfort and the self-confidence to take on assignments I didn't believe I was capable of. So I have tried to make a list for all of you who are listening and are at the beginning of your careers. So here we go. Number 1, surround yourself with a team that believes in you. Build your dream team, and it can consist of friends and family, but also make sure to work amongst people who believes in you. Number 2, get a mentor. A professional mentor can act sounding board and help you to make wise decisions in a wider perspective. I think it was Gunilla who talked about this earlier on as well, that you can get connected to other ones in this or in that person's network. Number 3, get yourself a roadmap. This is your journey. Don't let anyone else take control of it. Number 4, believe in yourself. You probably can do so much more than you dare to dream about. And if a decision you have made turns out to be wrong, make sure to change it. What is the worst thing that could happen? Last but not least, prioritize yourself. I have 2 small children at home and do know how difficult it can be to when the everyday puzzle doesn't add up. It's okay to make adjustments, but remember that you are important. So this was just quite briefly about my journey to where I am today, and hopefully you can pick some of the tip as going on your career journey.
Thank you, Elin. Very inspiring and good list. That's very hands-on. And me also being an engineer, I like lists and Excel sheets. And our next invited speaker is my dear colleague, Ewellyn. How are you?
I am fine, thank you very much. And I will share some
Please do
slides.
so. And same here. If you find questions to Ewellyn, type them directly in the chat if you like. And afterwards, you can also raise hand or just speak out. So that is fine. Celebrating of women in science, topic of today. And I think we are doing great so far celebrating. And now we look forward to listen to you, Ewellyn. Thank you again, Elin.
Thank you. So can you see this in presentation mode?
Perfectly well.
Great, great. So thank you very much, Maria, for creating this opportunity and inviting me. I'm Ewellyn Capanema. I'm a principal scientist at the Rice Research Institute of Sweden, and it's my pleasure to be here today. When I was first invited to be participating in this event, I started to think, what am I going to talk about? How should I approach this? Because being a very technical person, I got a little bit lost. So, and then I started to think, what about the historical female in science? Then I pick up a piece of paper and I decide, okay, I will write down some names. And for my frustration, I could remember only a couple of names. And that was tough. But I could make a number of male scientists, and that was frustrating. So what I did, I went to research, and I started to research about the historical females and science. And then I made this timeline here with a female scientist, and it's not comprehensive at all. And I choose then aleatory as they were appearing on my research. And then I keep getting fascinated by their stories. And what I put here starting on 300s until late 1900s. And the story started with Hypatia of Alexandria. And this is 370s AD. And she was a mathematician, a philosopher, an astronomer. And if we keep looking of these amazing women, they were astronomer, computer programming. And if we think that the greenhouse effect is something new, yeah, we are 100% wrong. Eunice Foote in 1850, she not only theorized, she demonstrated the greenhouse effect. And then the most well-known female scientist, Marie Curie, that in spite of having winning 2 Nobel Prizes, one in chemistry and one in physics, she was denied membership at the French Academy of Science just because she was a woman. And then if we go now to the 1900s, and again, I pick some women here, and I started with Alice Ball, in 1916, she was a chemist and she found the cure for leprosy. And she started with 2 disadvantages per se, because she was minority twice. She was a woman in black. And then if we look at all these wonderful women, so they have a commonality. They have a common denominator. And the common denominator here is not that they are females. The common denominator is they all dealt with an enormous amount of sexism. They have their work not recognized. Their achievements were not acknowledged. And in a lot of time, the male co-worker presented their work as his. So they were more acknowledged about their findings themselves. And then when I started looking at that, so I thought, okay, I know what I wanted to talk, because the struggle is real. And this was before and is still now. So then I, like Elin, I will talk a little bit about my journey. And my journey is a little bit different because I keep moving around the different continents. And my story started in Brazil, and then I moved to US, and right now I am in Sweden. And how this happened, I was born and raised in the southeast part of Brazil, in Belo Horizonte, Minas Gerais state. I was born in a family of 6. We are 6, 2 older brothers, a younger sister, and we were all educated in a very traditional way. So women and men have different roles, like Elin was telling in her speech. Man is the breadwinner, and the women is the, as my father would talk, is the pillar of the house. A woman is the one who holds the family together. So then inside this whole traditional way, when it came time to go to university, I decided to go for science. And when I told my family, the reaction was like, what? What are you going to do? Why are you doing that? What do you try to achieve? This is a man's field. And then I thought, well, I like chemistry, so I would like to, I'm going to study chemistry. And then the reaction was, aha, okay, so you're going to be a science teacher or a chemistry teacher. And that was okay because those were women type of job. And just as an example here, I put some data from a university in Brazil, in São Paulo state, which put the admission percentage between male and female during the decades 1970 all the way to 2000. And we see that even though the amount of female as a whole in admissions increased almost 1-to-1. If we look at this data in 2003, in the areas of science and engineering, the presence of female was about less than 1/3 of the amount of males. Okay, so that is things of life. We don't stuck on this. And then I start my course. I graduate in a bachelor in chemistry, later decided to go back and do a master course. And then towards the end of my master course, I met these scientists from North Carolina State University that have connections with my university in Brazil, that is Universidade Federal de Minas Gerais. And there we started to discuss my work during my master, and together with my advisor, we come to the conclusion that I should go to PhD. And then what is my work? We then design what it was my work plan for my PhD. So, and then in a way, my life was kind of a settle. Then if I would put a timeline here, how things happen. So I started my master, I have my master dissertation. The next step is to do my PhD, start in Brazil, go to US, but then life happens. And then I got pregnant. And then I have my daughter, a beautiful baby daughter. And then the whole family women role this kick in, and I started to question, how can I balance motherhood with my professional career? How can I do that? And then I look at the wonderful women at the chemistry department at the university. And I look at them specifically, it was Dr. Marília Ottoni, Dorila Veloso, that they didn't have kids, they didn't have a family, and they also had a career. And then in my mind, if they did, I could do it. So then I can make this happen. But then how in the heck could I fit all this together with moving to another country? So it was a big stress how to figure this out. And this is my daughter, just to have empathic to my struggle. And then I talked to my partner, my husband, and we talk about the pros and cons. And he was very supportive, and he thought, okay, so this will be good for your career, but also good for my career in IT. And we decided, okay, here we go. We are moving to US. And then next step is to let our families know and our friends and acquaintances. And then it was a huge amount of stress, especially not only with the whole moving process, but I was questioned all the time or many times, how can you do that? How can you take your child from this environmental, that the support environment, and move her to another country just because of your career? Or I would hear, how could you do this with your husband? How could you require that he stop his business, stop what he's doing in Brazil to follow you to another country just because you wanted to move on in your career? And then that was very strong for me, because when a man do that, he is looking after the family. He is looking like a hero, like, look what he's doing. But the woman, she has to be punished because this is not her role. This was how I was feeling. And then there you go. So we decided, and then we moved all the way from Minas Gerais state to North Carolina state. We moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. And then we arrived in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then you can imagine the amount of challenges. We are both trying to develop our career. We are in a different country without the support of a family, and we have a child. So then my husband has to step up. He has to step up and help caring for Anna, which is something that in Brazil, we have a caretaker, we have a babysitter. This was not so much required. But then only a family, only the two of us, we could not do it. So remember, we were both trying to build our careers, and with this, it was time that I have to work long hours. This means that I have to take Anna with me to the department. And a chemistry lab is not a place for a child, but I have work to do. I had to be there. So then I have all these colleagues and that help me with Anna. So it was many hours inside the office with a set of lab glassware, some little pieces of dry ice and water, and something to make this colorful so she could be entertained and I could work. At the same time, one of the challenges was that I was at the Department of Wood and Paper Science. Now it's a different name, but this was the name. And just by definition, this was a male environment. Just to give an idea, in our research group, we were 6. I was the only female. And inside the department was 12 professors, 11 males and 1 female. It was definitely a male environment, and pulp and paper changing a little bit, but it was basically dominated by men, and still maybe a bit like that. And then it happened one event that was kind of a key point for me, is that for some reason, during a certain period of time, we have a male administrative person, was a male secretary. And then we have these formal events at the department that time to time, we would have this event. And when you enter the room, you have to be introduced. So then this administrative person, when we were coming to the room, for every male professor that entered the room, he would introduce them. This is Dr. So-and-so. And he go on and on. And then when he came to Adriana, he introduced, this is Adriana Kickman. And when he came to me, this is Ewellyn Capanema. And to be honest, I think I was so accustomed to be not acknowledged as a woman and with my title, that I didn't really care. That was not important to me. However, Adriana, that was very, very conscious about the struggles of a woman in a male-dominated area. She was furious. And then she came to me and said, like, Ewellyn, how he dare disrespect us in this way? They have a doctoral degree the same way that we too have a doctoral degree, and why they need that they use their doctoral degree to introduce them, but we were just treated by our names, first and last name. And then for me, this was an eye-opener to really understand that, yeah, this happens. And by ignoring it, it doesn't make it better, and it doesn't make it go away. This was just an example. So if we move forward a little bit. So during my career at NC State, I started as a visiting scholar. Then I became a research associate, research assistant professor, and adjunct professor, which is a position that I hold until now. But I decided to leave academia. I decided to move to industry, and this is what I did. So then for the next number of years, I was in US, but working on a private sector, until it came a time that I was leaving my job. And then I sent a message talking that to all my contacts saying, okay, from now on, this is the email where you can find me. And then what happened is that I got a message from scientists from the formal invention, that RISE invention, that interestingly enough have a lot of connections with North Carolina and also with Minas Gerais state. So then we have a full cycle here. And he said, how about you come here? And then I came for an interview, and I did like, and I decided, okay, I think I'm going there. But then I went back home, and when I talked to Anna and Ed, I was, what the heck did I do? Why am I accepting that? And then it was interesting because I did have the support of them. And the answer for me is like, because this is good for your career. You should follow that. And we will be all right. We as a family will be all right. And you're going to be all right. And if you don't like, you can always come back. So then just to make something short, I moved to Sweden. And then it's a very gender neutral, or this gap between gender, it's much lower than if we compare to United States and Brazil. But interesting enough, so when I came here, a person that is really dear to me, it's a male colleague, he told me the following: Ewellyn, you do like a man, you behave, you do things like a man. And I was like, I don't really understand what you want to say with that. And then his answer was, men go out, men look for different ways of grow career. This is not a typical of a woman. And this was my welcoming to Sweden. And I want to say, this person was not a mean at all. He didn't want to offend me, but it's a reality. It's a reality that we have to deal with it. That is the perception of women. So, and I think I'm already talk a lot. So, and my whole career, I was in environmental, where I have mostly male. But if we think what as women we can do together, how should we interact with each other? I think that is, we should be together to break boundaries. And we have to constantly thinking, what connections, how can I connect with the women around me, and how can we connect with women around us in a way that we can change our workplace and we can change our personal relationship. With this, I thank you all for listening to me, and I received this cartoon from a former professor from Federal University of Minas Gerais, Dr. Dorila Piló Veloso, and I thought that it really is fantastic, and I thank her for that, and I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ewellyn. And I see that some of you are using the reactions, and very good. This is very inspiring, and I'm so honored to work with you, Ewellyn. Thank you so much, Ewellyn. Now Kristin is prepared to share her thoughts and journey. How are you, Kristin?
I'm fine, please. First of all, I want to thank you so much for inviting me to come to speak. It's an honor, and especially on such a day as Women's Day. And I also, I must say, it was very interesting to listen to both Elin and Ewellyn. It was like listening to Sommarpratarna. Maybe perhaps not every one of you know, but it's a radio program in Sweden, and it's very interesting to listen to. So thank you very much. And from what you told, I can see both similarities and also differences. My name is Kristin Israelsson, and I work as a mill manager at Nordic paper Bäckhammar. I have worked here now for 2.5 years. I live in Hammarö. It's 70 kilometers from here, with my husband Jörgen and our 2 children, Moa and Nils, who are 15 and 13 years old. I have lived now in Värmland for 23 years, but I originally come from Piteå in Norrbotten, where I was born and raised. One of the reasons I ended up here, where I am today, both if you say geographically, but also in the working life, is because of the choices I've made when it comes to studies and also different job opportunities that has come along my way. And then my husband Jörgen is also, of course, he has played a big part of it. But I have now worked for 23 years in this paper and pulp industry business. I've done it since I finished school. But I must say that I would end up in Värmland was absolutely nothing I would have guessed while growing up. My roots are in Tornedalen. If you know where they are, it's up north in Sweden, where both my parents come from. I have also spent a lot of my childhood in Tornedalen. And the first time I was in Värmland was when I traveled to Karlstad for an interview for my first job. And that was after I had finished my studies. And when I went to school in Piteå, I had never in my wildest imagination been able to guess that I would live 1,000 kilometers from my hometown or family. And I would never have guessed that I today would have been a mill manager. And I am also pretty sure that only the thought of it would have scared me then. When I was asked to join and speak this day, I immediately felt that it was something I wanted to do. Because if the journey I made so far and the experiences I have in some way or another can inspire another girl or another woman to apply for a science education, or move for the possibility to get an interesting job, or apply for a job in a male-dominated industry, such as the pulp and paper industry, I am more than happy to do so. And I can say that I am today incredibly happy and grateful that I made this path of choice. I have made and all the opportunities that I have been given along the way. But also some of the steps I have taken have required a lot of courage on my part, but I have never regretted any of them. When I was in school, in primary school, I thought math was fun. I like to calculate. And based on that, and only that, I decided to study technical line. I don't know the English word, it's teknisk linje in Swedish. I chose that for high school. And I did not really know what challenges I would meet, and I had no idea where it would lead me. And I knew I would end up in a class with mostly boys, and my best friends did not choose the same education as I did. So applying for it required courage, and the first day of school was very nervous for me. I did not really know what to expect. But my worries turned out to be unjustified, and it became one of the most fun school years of my life. And during high school, I discovered that chemistry was interesting. So the last year of high school, I chose the specialization chemistry. And that was because we at one point manufactured a substance to a medicine. It took us several days to produce it, but we did it in the lab, and this really caught my interest because at the same time you could explain what happened in all the different chemical reaction steps. It was very logical to me, and I think that was why I got fond of it. And so I, from then, planned to be working in the pharmaceutical industry. And that was the first time for me that I had that thought. But and since I was then set on working in the pharmaceutical industry, I looked up schools that had the right education for it. And the education I felt was right for me was a Master of Science in Chemistry at and KTH, Royal Institute of Technology, had the right specialization that I wanted to go. But I absolutely didn't want to move, and especially not south. I wanted to be in the north of Sweden. I was very homesick at that time. But I applied to KTH anyway, and I got in. And that took a lot of courage to move. But I did it in steps. And first I moved 500 kilometers to Sundsvall, where KTH had a branch at Mitthögskolan. And after 2 years in Sundsvall, the whole class moved to KTH in Stockholm. And I think I needed the years in Sundsvall. It was a way for me to gradually get used to living far from home. And I think my family needed it too. And in the third year at KTH, it was time to choose a specialization also there. And since I had set my mind on study organic chemistry, that was my plan from the beginning. But in the third class, it was the whole class was going to study visit. And that visit was to Hallstavik, a paper mill. And I knew there were a specialization in pulp and paper, but that was the last thing I had in mind to apply for. In Piteå, we have 2 paper mills where I grew up, but I didn't know anyone working there, and I didn't have any insight, or I didn't really know what they did more than that they were producing paper. But I could, of course, sometimes smell the mill, and it didn't at that time smell that good. It has been improved during the years, so nowadays the mills doesn't smell like they did then. But this study visit was a real eye-opener for me, and I got a whole new picture of what it could be like to work in a paper mill. We got to meet young engineers who worked at the mill, and you could see that they had fun together, and they enjoyed their jobs. They described their everyday lives and the challenges that they had. They also described the opportunities they saw in the mill, and their enthusiasm when they described their job got stuck with me. And I realized that this is exactly how I wish it would be where I work. And after that visit, I completely changed and instead applied for the specialization in pulp and paper technology. And that was the last one I had said I would go. But it is also a choice I have never regretted. And then it was time to do the thesis. And I saw my chance to get back to Norrbotten and Piteå. So I applied to Assi Domän in Piteå. I don't know if you heard about Assi Domän, but it is today called the Smurfit Kappa, the mill. But they had a major staff reduction at that time. So I realized that it would be very difficult to get a job in Piteå. So I started to look for work all over Sweden. And there were not many vacancies during this period. And at that time, you didn't search for a job on the internet. You looked in the paper magazines. It feels now like it was 100 years ago, but that's the fact. And a friend of mine who lived in Stockholm sent me a paperclip from a newspaper in Dagens Nyheter that said that Stora Enso was looking for trainees. And I sent an application, and after an interview, I was offered a job as a trainee at Stora Enso Research in Karlstad. I had never been to Värmland, so it took a lot of courage for me to move 1,000 kilometers to a city so far away and where I had no connections, no relatives at all. It was 3 very fun and educational years at Stora Enso. I worked there as a research engineer, and I had the opportunity to work with very interesting projects and visit several of Stora Enso's mills around the world. I also made friends for life, which made Karlstad finally feel like home for me. Then I heard that Gruvön, it was Billerud back then, today it's Billerud Korsnäs, but the Gruvön mill was looking for a process engineer. And since I was very eager to work closer to production, I applied for the job. I got the job and started to work at Gruvön. I started there in 2002, and I worked there for 17 years in different positions. My first job was a process engineer, and I was also responsible for technical service for the market pulp for my first 6 years there. I worked as a process manager for 6 years after that, and later I became a production manager for the wood yard, the hardwood pulp fiber line, and the wastewater treatment plant. And I also had that job for about 6 years. I, of course, applied to these jobs. I have been fortunate to have people around me that believe in me and encouraged me. So it was 17 incredibly fun years. And over the years working in Gruvön, I have faced challenges that sometimes seemed difficult to overcome. But the team spirit that existed at the mill always made us succeed. So my memories of it are only positive. And the pulp and paper industry, as many of you know, is a male-dominated industry. And this has, of course, meant that I have worked mostly with men. But I have always felt welcome and respected. I have always felt like I'm one of the gang. And I have never been treated badly because I am a woman. And I also got the opportunity to both grow and develop in Gruvön, which I also did. But what has become more and more clear to me is that female role models have been important to me when I have faced a big choice in my working life, especially when it comes to courage. I have been fortunate to have female role models around me who have shown that they have courage and have gone their own way. When I then was offered the job as mill director at Rottneros in 2018, I was faced with such a choice of path, and it was not obvious to me to say yes. I like my job at Gruvön, and my driving force has never been to reach high management positions. What has driven me has always been commitment and the joy I feel for my job and what we achieve together as a team. And but challenges have always been a driving force as well. I constantly want to learn more. But now I faced a whole new challenge. And I was, of course, happy that they saw me as a candidate for the position. And I thought a lot about what I should do. I realized that if I want to test my wings and take on a big challenge, this is the opportunity. But there were many thoughts going around in my head. One thought that came back to me was, how can we achieve an equal society if in this case I do not say yes when the opportunity comes? Because that applies to all of us. What signal do I send to my daughter if I don't accept? And I have never before thought so before. It took a lot of courage, but I accepted the job and I worked at Rottneros for about 1 year. And during that time, I was contacted by Nordic paper, and they were looking for a mill manager to Bäckhammar. And what made me choose to leave Rottneros and take the job at Bäckhammar was due to several reasons. What attracted me to the job here was that I would once again return to production process I have worked with since I left school. In Rottneros, they produced mechanical pulp, and in Bäckhammar, he would produce sulfide pulp, and we have also 2 paper machines. So the 2 mills production is based on completely different processes, where the sulfide process is much more complex. And I did not think that I would miss working with the process, but I did. But the biggest contributing factor that made me accept the job at Nordic Paper was because the person who contacted me is also one of my female role models that I had worked with earlier in Ewellyn. It was Anita Sjölander, our CEO at Nordic Paper. And she's a very committed and good leader, and I wanted to work with her again. It is also a choice I have never regretted. When I started here at Bäckhammar, I didn't know anyone at the time, but it was I was immediately met by welcoming environment. From the first day, I have felt very welcome and as a part of the team. Our work here is filled with challenges, but we have a lot of fun while dealing with them. And there is a very strong drive among the employees to constantly develop and drive the mill forward, which is important for me. And if I should describe what it's like to work at the Nordic Paper, I would describe it in the same way as the young engineers we met on our study visit to Hallstavik. And I wish more people would get the chance to see what it's like, and perhaps it will be an eye-opener also for them, as it was for me. The pulp and paper industry, which most people perhaps don't know, we have very, very interesting job and stimulating challenges. And also at the same time, it's an environment where we have a lot of fun together, which for me always has been important. What I hope that I have communicated to you is I really hope that you find your own way and that you find the courage to take the step when the challenge comes. You will never regret it. And if you don't have a role model, a female role model yourself, keep in mind that you can always become one for someone else, which is also important. And for me, it has also been important to have people around me who believes in me, or then you can achieve almost anything. And what I can do and what we all can do for people around us is to show them that we believe in them and encourage them. It makes people grow. And most basically, I think it's important to have a humble and unpretentious attitude. When you have that, you have everything to gain and nothing to lose, I think. I hope I in some way could have inspired someone, perhaps working in the pulp and paper industry, I don't know.
Definitely, Kristin. Thank you so much. And we get some reactions also popping up, and very inspiring indeed. Thank you for sharing.